Shal Ngo is an award-winning filmmaker joining me to discuss his transition from branded filmmaking into feature film. His recent movie, released in March, Control Freak, is out now on Hulu and is about a motivational speaker infected by a parasitic demon that challenges everything she's worked for. He also directed Hapa, a branded film for 23andMe, discussing his struggle of coming from a mixed race background and finding belonging.
I mean, I'm a pretty go with the flow kind of guy already, so maybe that helps. The biggest thing for me is just sort of like it's very unsexy sounding, but it's sort of like every you're hit with a bunch of decisions, and once it push comes to shove, it's like what are you willing to give up and what aren't you? Like you need what's your level of priority? You know, you don't have simplest one being like you don't have time to shoot, you know, these three shots. Which shot can you cut? You don't have the money to go to this location. What about this? You know, so it's really just like what can you sacrifice and what can't you, and where do you put down your foot and be like, no, this is what it needs to be. Um, and that's working for the people who can find that balance as well. Like Scott is extremely stubborn DP, which I actually was down with. Means that we butt head, and sometimes there's conflict, but conflict is good on the set when it's like best idea wins. Like for me, like I really want my set to be a place where best idea wins. Um, so he pushed to keep in some shots that took more setup, but we ended up working and like giving it a lot of flavor that was important. So like, one lesson was like, there's a couple shots in Control Freak. I don't, the one where she's like looking into the hole and it like on the and that pulls back. Like that was a shot where I was like, we don't have time. We need to cut the shot. And Scott was like, no, we got to keep the shot. The shot's awesome. What are you talking about? Keep the shot. And I was like, fine, well, yeah, let's do it. And then I'm just so glad we kept that shot because like that's early in the film. Without that moment, you don't have that kind of creep and cinematic spectacle energy vibe to it that's so key. And that was something where I wasn't seeing the whole vision of the film. And a big part of why keeping that is important is because this is another thing that's really key when you're making these decisions on a feature is that you're not making every scene is part of something much bigger. And if you ever lose sight of the big picture, that's when you start making the wrong decisions. You know, the wrong decision would be like keeping a super cool shot that wasn't important to the story that came at a point in the film where we already had like a super cool shot like 5 minutes before that, right? Like you're at the 60-minute mark of the movie, and right now it's not just about like a really dope image. It's about moving things along. It's a performance. In that moment, it so happens like when you're early on in the film, like you need to continue to give the audience reasons not to turn off your movie and watch some other shit. So I think that shot, at least for me, like one of the big things that it did was like, was in a window obviously into her psychology, but also just alone was just a really powerful, haunting image that upped the creep factor. And so that's why it's important to keep it in. And so these are decisions that you're making on the fly that you just get better at. And a lot of it is just gut. It's like anything else, like an athlete or an artist or something else. Like you want to get to the level where you're not making all of these very conscious decisions. It's just this gut instinct and you act on it. And after you act on it, then maybe you have to, explain it to other people why it is important. But it generally starts with just like a feeling inside where you're just like, oh, yeah, this is it. And to divorce your ego from it, divorce like any of your pride or whatever. For me, I want it to be something where like, let's say I was imagining the shot for like years and I thought it was so beautiful and visceral. Like if I get a good argument against that shot, if it's like, you know what, actually this doesn't make sense for the character, it's going to cost this amount of money. Like I want to be ready to do it, be ready to just kill your babies. It's the whole thing, right? It's the whole of the piece that matters. And every piece, every component obviously makes that up, but you're constantly having to make these decisions where it's like, can I give this up? Should I give this up? What's not to give up? There are other situations where I'll put my foot down and be like, no, like this, there's a scene, where Kat, who I don't know what's her name, where Val is, confessing to Robbie that he's not actually there. And it's this very long take and it's a very emotional scene. I thought that was such an important scene. So I was like, I know this day is packed. We need to cut some other stuff because I want performance time for Kelly to like be able to do this right. Because one of the few takes we have more than 3 takes of. We think we have 7 or 8 takes of that shot. It's a long shot. But I'm like, this is so. To me, this is so important to the movie. This is the moment where people will start. People are going to be on the fence about this character because she's so kind of terrible in so many ways. But I think this is the scene where people are going to understand her and empathize with her and maybe be on her side. So that just to me is like one of the most important moments in the movie. So let's put some time into it. Let's sacrifice what you need to. So it's like where do you sacrifice and where do you put your foot down. And that applies to the timing. That applies to any pressure you're gonna have from the studio, from other people, and from people telling you like this is a bad idea. There's also a couple ideas in the film where a lot, not everybody, but a lot of people were like, are you sure you want to do this? And I had to keep being like, yes, I'm sure, yes, I'm sure, yes, I'm sure this is right, this is right. And luckily, I ended up being right, but it was a gut feeling, right? I think I was right, at least. So there's as a director, there's just a lot of you just have to navigate that a lot and really try to separate your ego and your preconceptions from it. And again, just like you're all in service of something outside of you. And the ideal situation is that you create something that just exists entirely separate of you. That has nothing, it's nothing to do with you and everything to do with you. And that it just the film just, it goes out into the world and it's not yours anymore, like a child.
Yeah, the way you're talking right now, it's such a cool navigation to be direct. Like all the things that are coming in line for your position. You're mentioning like dealing with your ego, following your gut, trusting your vision, like all these psychological, spiritual, and technical factors all coming into one for a project, and then being able to just release it and let it go. That's super cool, Shal. Right. Um, Now I kind of want to jump back into the commercial filmmaking world. For what parts of your time in the commercial filmmaking industry do you actively use right now in feature film?
Um, I guess like dealing with clients is really a good practice when you have to when you have to deal with people that you don't necessarily like vibe with, but you have to find like common ground and work on this together. Like just like being able to work with client clients is good practice for being able to work with studios, and so that was definitely helpful. You know, like kind of recognizing the chain of command. Like there's certain people that could just you know I'm not the top of the food chain, and there's certain decisions that will ultimately be made by someone else. So how do I make sure to get what I want as clearly as I can, and navigate the waters of like being genuine and creating connection, while still like pursuing my own agenda. Like sort of the politics of that, I think is very helpful. Just the experience of being on site with a ton of people. Sorry.
Right? It must be a very intricate process, right? Navigating all the hierarchical politics.
Yeah, totally. It's very similar to commercials too. Like you make a commercial and then, at the end of the day, like, someone high up in agency or the brand could just be like, oh, I didn't like the shirt he was wearing, or some bullshit. And then the spot's over. You know what I mean? I've had versions of that happen. Yeah, not a shirt, but I've definitely had spots killed for no reason. And then music videos killed for no reason. Just some fucking exec was like, I don't know if you want to do that.
They killed the entire music video.
But music video never, yeah, it never even released because I think it was too old of a song or something. Yeah, that's kind of when I started getting out of music videos when I realized just how awful these labels were and just how. And this is for every industry, right? But I felt it in the music industry where it's just like these they're just like these people just like didn't give a shit. Well, everyone on the set was like suffering for this, and it was like the combination of like the shadiness and like the stupidity of it was just like this is just not and the budget's just shrinking. I was like, this is not viable. At the end of the day, I make no money off of this, and you still don't even release the video because of some bullshit. I think I made a music video back in the day for like $1,000. I maybe I'd have 10 grand, maybe I'd have like 30 grand, but it was nothing. It was not six figures. It was just crazy.
I just shot a music video for my friend for like $80. So like
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. That's almost like to me that's almost like a better use of your time 'cause at least it's your friend and there's some like yeah. I'm sure people like relate this also in the industry and the music industry where it's like, unfortunately, like just because you have a small budget doesn't mean that the higher ups aren't going to treat it like every other project. And that was also a frustration for me that, people were treating this project like it was $1 million spot when we had like $5,000, and kind of just like the demands that come with that feel very unreasonable. That whole thing sort of turned me off about it.
Experimentation, right? Like if it's not an expensive thing to throw out, like 5 grand for a record label isn't that much to just throw out and see what happens.
Yeah. But if they do that, then they should just, I mean, my thing is like when you're taking on any project, it's sort of like it should either be for, especially in the commercial space, it should either be for a payday or because you think the spot can actually be cool. And that's sort of, to me at least, that should be kind of the only reasons. In my experience, I met very few. I have a couple of people that I really like in the commercial world, but like I met very few where like me doing them a favor for doing a project for less would lead to any more work. You know what I mean? Like, yes, it is about building relationships, but I don't think it's that useful to do favors for people in the ad business if you don't think the spot's going to be cool. Like, I just don't think it's worth it. Whereas I think making a music video for your friend for $80, you think the music video can be cool, it's like a much better use of your time because then you have creative control. You can make something cool. It's fun. It's like for a purpose. But I think doing favors for agency people doesn't get you very far unless they're your friend, unless they're actually your friends.
Right.
Well, totally.
For
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, it's also an excuse to hang out with my friend, right?
Yeah.
A bit of both worlds. Yeah. How, like, when you're working with a client, right? You're talking about these um corporate hierarchies. Um, you mentioned like you need to express what you want with as much like empathy and understanding as possible. How do you um how do you help them get like how do you show that you are dedicated to helping them get what they want on their end? Because it's probably like a give and take, right, on both sides.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I maybe I just have a bad attitude about all that. That's why I didn't do it well. I mean, you have to. I guess just remembering at the end of the day that this isn't yours. Like you're hired for your ability. But if it's not in line with what this other person wants, then there's no point in it. And there's a lot of politics that go into that too. Like you have to be very political and very sort of shrewd and smart in decisions that you make. But I guess maybe you could compare it to being similar to a film. Like it's in the service of like what you're making is to sell a product, and that's why it exists. That's its only purpose for it to being created. So it's like if it's not actively selling the product in the way that they see it, then then it's unnecessary. So but there's a way to fit it into their vision too. I find like you still want to push, but it's sort of like it's more about like why are you taking this job? Are you taking it because you think you can make something cool for your reel? Um, then yeah, I mean keep pushing as hard as you can to get what you want to make the spot dope. And make sure that you get the what go with it. But if it's a job that's more about the money and the relationship, like just really try to give them the best version of what you think they want. You know what I mean? Like sometimes they won't be able to communicate what they want. So it's if you can get inside the client's head and try to figure out what they think they want, because sometimes they'll tell you shit that is just like what are you even saying? Like yeah. Like we want it to be different, but like exactly the same. That's the other thing too. Like a lot of times like, when they walk really different, they want the exact same thing, but like with like a different colored shirt or like a lens flare. Like that's what they're really saying. So it's a big part of it is just like translation. Like, how do you translate what this person is actually saying to you? Because they're saying it through like ad talk. They're saying it in this language that has kind of like, in a lot of ways, like nothing to do with the final product at all. So it's like about translating what you think they're trying to say that they want, and like getting a sense of their psychology and just like doing the best that you can with it. And also just like being ready to like pivot at a moment's notice if there's something like, oh, we don't want that anymore, then like too bad. But yeah, so I guess maybe a good. I'm trying to give good advice that's not like bitter and not actually helpful and like optimistic and positive. So I guess it would just be like going into the project, like know what you want to get. If it's about building a relationship or if it's about like making a really dope spot, like just sort of figure out what your goal is ultimately in the mix and just make sure that you're listening and optimizing the path to getting what you want for the situation.
Definitely. Um, Shal, before we wrap up, I I wanted to ask you, what advice do you have for commercial filmmakers looking to get into feature film?
Yeah, make a short right now. Like you probably had some project that you've been talking about for X number of years. Maybe you have a feature, maybe you have a short. Um, you should be making it now. Like in all likelihood, you've already been waiting too long. You've been sitting on this thing for too long, and you should figure out a way to make it as cheaply, as simply as possible. Like whatever idea you have that is good, figure out a way to execute on it as cheaply and efficiently as possible, as soon as possible, because this stuff takes so long, and you can keep telling yourself that like, oh, I want to wait. There's another thing I see people like having like a bigger project that they're kind of talking to people about, like getting quote unquote momentum on, but it's like, dude, I don't, these movies don't get made unless you and make them with your friends. It's not real. Like Hollywood will tell you even like Scorsese and these motherfuckers have like movies that try to get made for 10 years. Like you have like one meeting with someone and you're like, oh yeah, like this is moving. I just to get like X million dollars for whatever. It's like, if you don't have a bunch of other stuff under your belt, like just go make it with your friends. Another really good route that I've seen people do that I think is really smart is, let's say you don't have that idea yet, but you have like a location, like you're in Iowa and your friend has like this abandoned farm that you can get for free that has like plumbing for whatever reason, and you and your friends can go out there for X number of weeks and shoot either a short or a feature. Like base it around a location that you have access to. Just make it as simple and cheap as possible for you to shoot something cool and like go and shoot it with your friends like immediately. Because even if the movie sucks, like you are definitely going to come out of it. The only thing that's guaranteed is that you are going to learn from the experience, right? And so figure out a way to make it as cheaply and efficiently as possible. Attempt to make like a masterpiece, but accept if it sucks, because in all likelihood it's not even gonna be like, okay, in all likelihood your movie's gonna be bad. But do your best to make it really good. And maybe it is really good. And if it's really bad, just be like, fuck it, and then make another one. And I bet you that one's not gonna be as bad. And then maybe that one still is not as good as you want it to be, but fucking make another one. So just figure out a pipeline in a situation where you can be creating stuff as quickly as possible. Now, so I'm writing this new movie, but I'm trying to make it in a way where there's a version I can make for X million dollars, and there's a version that I could make with my friends. Push comes to shove, right? Like having that in the back of your mind. But yeah, just keep making stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, hopefully the dream is to have both, right? Having your friends and millions of dollars to work on your film, like a Adam Sandler movie, you know?
Yeah, all those guys still work. A lot of big guys all still like work with their friends. Yeah, crazy.
Hey, I got this multi-million-dollar movie for you. Let's hang out. Yeah, that sounds like a blast. Shal, I wanted to thank you for coming on the show today, and I wish you the best of luck with your new film that you said you're writing. And yeah, guys, exactly what Shal's saying. Like, go out and do it, right? Action, yeah, action, action, action.